an undisclosed location somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere. It's everything Wall Street doesn't want you to know, everything the financial media won't tell you, everything mutual fund managers are hiding from you. This is the voice of the underground, the Wall Street Underground.
There's a man who leads a life of danger. To everyone he meets, he stays a stranger.
What are all the mutual fund promises about this bold new future? How come Wall Streeters aren't running for their lives and mutual fund hucksters? Why is no one talking about the $8 trillion they wiped out?
Secret agent man, secret agent man, they've given you a number and digging away your name.
Now, here's the voice of the underground, Maverick International financial analyst, Nick Lorino.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Radio Free Wall Street. You're here. It's time. We're together. We're on the World Wide Web. And we're live at 5 o'clock New York City time, and we're having fun. What's going on? Well, it's a weekend, and I hate the weekends. And there's no market. And I had a good day today. News was kind of light. I mean, other than the stormy weather stuff and, you know, the usual roar of the Trumpapades. We looked at what was the numbers for the Friday close and what's going on. And last week was a remarkable week in that rates continue going higher. We also had several Fed officials out in the Fed's warnings. Now, we've got a June meeting coming up at the Federal Reserve. They're going to raise another 0.25 then. I've got what's my next reading is the August. They don't have an August meeting. So that means that's the September meeting coming up, which should be early enough in September that they'll move on that one because it's out of the election consciousness. October, they'll never move for a meeting there. And then I've got a December meeting. And so that means that I have 3 more rate increases, 2 at minimum. So I'm going, and I'm at 0.25 per rate increase. They'll slide the range, by 50 basis points, by the way. So that puts you at a slam dunk for a 3% Fed fund rate. You came in before they started the cycle at 0.25, but nobody was worried about collecting that. So you've gone from 3% interest, from 0% interest to free. Now, please hear me clearly. Our analysis of the backup in rates shows that the Fed's got themselves a great big problem. And let me explain what it is. We've had 10 years, as we've well schooled you on, in zero interest rates. And we also had zero interest rates in Europe. Now, the Fed in America was careful about its buying, mostly buying securities. Okay? In Europe, they actually bought corporate debt. Now, what happened in America was the corporate debt got handled by the bond market and the junk bond market. Okay? So they provide liquidity, what we call around the block. And that was, well, you take all of the securities that the banks have, government securities, you buy them off of them. Okay, then you go ahead and you pay the banks on their free reserve deposits they've got with you. So that now gives them, that's actually money from heaven. So that was the game we played. In Europe, the game was different. Now, the Europe banking system is far bigger than the U.S. banking system. A lot more cash, a lot more debt. And the problem is the government debt in that system they'd already absorbed. They still had to absorb more money, so they basically put on corporate paper. So in Europe, the European Central Bank is the largest owner of debts of corporations. And their operations, by the way, are a minimum of $1 billion a day. I see $5 billion a day. And they are not lowering rates. Now, you got a huge differential between all the European rates. Now, the other thing is that, if you look at Italian debt, it should be like Puerto Rico. It should be a lot higher, okay? But it's not. And that's because it's guaranteed by the European government. So it's a euro-based debt. So that means that countries like Spain and Portugal and Italy and France that have high debt loads and poor quality debt are borrowing at incredibly low rates. Now, the problem is the European Central Bank has not dared to pull back its endless easing. So now you have an out-of-bounds situation that the United States is pulling back, and the Fed pulling back means that our interest rates go higher on all the paper. Remember, when we're looking at that 3%, that's basically short-term overnight rate. Now, that's the source Perrier. You're going higher to where the 10-year rate is right at 10%. By the way, it's peaking right now. So you're going from 3 to 10, which means the yield curve is flattening. Now what's going to happen is the 10-year rate will peak at 10 and start coming down, and will start dancing on the curve, and that 3% rate could go to 4 or 5. I don't see it going much more than 5, but they could go to 4 or 5. But here's the problem. They basically had their balls cut off, and Donald Trump's really good at cutting off people's balls. I can give you a list of people that will come forward and tell you what he did to them. So anyway, this tax break bonanza for billionaires was a Kudlow bullshit drama, and they had to do something. The problem is this. The idea was that you would cut $3 trillion of federal tax revenue. In essence, that $3 trillion was basically debts of the richest 1% individuals, and government debt by the older government. Let me back up. The income tax debt of individuals and of the top 1% and the top corporations got cut by $3 trillion. In essence, for the middle class and middle class, they've seen a tax increase. But their tax increase did not offset the tax decrease. Now, the theory was, and Donald Trump didn't give a shit, he just wanted to get something for a campaign, something to run on, something to get in the news. The theory was that by giving $3 trillion in tax breaks to the biggest corporations and to the wealthiest individuals, you'd have stimulus. Now, I want to remind you that 90% of all job creation in America is by companies that have 50 or less employees, which means they're under that 250 mark, which means that they don't have access to the debt markets. They are not players on the stock market. Okay, so what you did was you gave it to the very small fraction of people, and among that 10% group, okay, that the corporate jobs created, well, in essence, they're not creating jobs. So you've heard about the 10 million jobs created? Well, the reality is they're not really being created at the corporate level. They are lower paid jobs. Small businesses don't have health insurance, really. They don't really have a pension program. They keep the way they get away from this is that they keep the employees under the threshold. Okay, let me explain. You might notice, if you're a student and been following what we tell you, that the average Earth work week has gone from 48 hours to 33. And the reason why is that these small businesses can't afford Obamacare. They can't afford Trump care. They can't afford any care. They can't afford pensions, and they can't afford to pay anything but close to minimum wage. By keeping their employee hours down at that 30 area, remember it's an average of 33, by keeping that 30 threshold, they declare them part-time workers, and they're out of the liability for the health insurance and all that, okay? So in essence, what you've done is you've created a subclass of employees in America. We created 10 million jobs. Aren't we great, Stormy, honey, baby? Bullshit. You created 10 million shit jobs of people working part-time, of people who got jobs without any retirement, without any benefit. In essence, you're paying the benefits. See, what's happening is, you heard about the entitlements? The entitlements are soaring because a lot of people are looking for the public trust, the entitlements, the food stamps programs, the welfare programs, Social Security programs. Now, they like to tell you how food stamps have gone down. That's only because of eligibility. But the reality is the disabled workers have skyrocketed. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security benefits are skyrocketing. So there was no savings there. So what you've ended up with is a $3 trillion increase under this tax program in the deficit. We've already scored, by the way, and this is by CBO, by the time the fiscal year ends, end of October, you're adding $2 trillion in national debt. Now, at the same time you're doing that, you have got the Fed that has to finance the deficit, and the deficit under Trump is $1.3 trillion this year. They're trying to say it's under $1 trillion, but by the time we get done with the accounting, it'll be 1.3. So that has to be financed. Now, at the same time you're doing that, you got the Federal Reserve that is dropping its balance sheet. Remember, they've got trillions and trillions of dollars on the books, and they are selling that debt into the market. Now you understand the backup right. So what you are seeing is a situation where in America, we're taking away the liquidity in the marketplace. We're raising interest rates on businesses. We are taking back out of the system the quantum easing. We are lessening the tax burden of the biggest corporations. We're increasing the tax burden on the individuals. Those are the people who spend the money. See, when you get that top 1% and you give them a tax break, $1.3 million a year in tax savings for that group, that's not stimulative for the economy because they don't spend it. When you get that lady who's a librarian, you give her $1.50 a week off her tax, she's going to spend it. The problem is it's not enough. So we're now in a deficit situation. In other words, we are negative stimulus. We're removing stimulus. We're increasing budget deficits. We're increasing taxes. And we're removing the quantum easing from the marketplace. Now, that is a recipe for failure, and I'll tell you why. Because you've also increased your government spending on military spending. And military spending is not stimulative. You need to understand that. In other words, if you spend, $1 trillion on the military, that benefits a few corporations, and they don't have to gear up, okay? They're not really adding more employees. They're not gearing that widely, and that's dead money, okay? That tank, that jet, basically is no longer a profit item. Now, when you put $1 trillion in infrastructure programs, well, now you're spreading it out. The labor force increases because remember, automation of military equipment is not that labor intensive, where construction is among the most labor intensive per man hour productivity anything we do. Right? It takes a lot of people. You got to work those shovels. And it also spills through the economy because it's well spread out with many different companies. In other words, it's not going into a few companies that are hoarding the cash, like Boeing or Lockheed. It gets spread very widely, General Dynamics. So that's the equation, is that you're not stimulating these Mets. And let me tell you, the Golding Trophy, the gold medal that they're trying to achieve is this. They need to have a situation where corporations now stimulate. In other words, corporations got $3 trillion in tax savings. In order to get themselves out of this jam, you got to have those corporations put in employees, invest in factories and machineries and things that employ people. And the reality is they're not doing that. As a matter of fact, the way the tax bill was written, it rewards companies for moving production and jobs offshore. And in fact, basically that they have a zero tax rate on their offshore endeavors. Yeah. That's something that Kudlow and those pricks forget to tell you because they're lying sacks of shit, but they all know that. So we're now, basically we're into the month of April. It's pretty much April done, so January, February, March, April. You're 4 months into this thing, and we now have enough of a database to know exactly what they're doing. Corporations are not investing in America. They've got their tax breaks, and they basically paid it out in the form of stock buybacks, which goes to, obviously, the wealthy stockholders. Dividends, especially on the preferred, and they've also, God love them, are investing in cutting headcount, okay? Like, for example, the banks have a massive firing program and a massive hiring in India and taking as much of their business offshore as possible because of the great tax benefits, and they especially need that. So the disaster is that we're entering a recession. There is no money to stimulate it because the stimulation has already been spent. The Fed has got no choice. By the way, the Fed has announced, this is part of what I want to tell you, that if we get a stock market downturn, and they didn't say when, I'm saying when, that they're not going to change their restriction of the economy, and it's not going to affect the fact that they're raising rates. You need to know that. So in other words, the translation is no bailout for banks this time. Now, in the past, they would consolidate the weaker institutions to the stronger. Unfortunately, there's no strong institutions, so that's not going to go on. And there is no cash in the system because of this crazy deficits rising because Donald Trump put together a tax program that doesn't aid the economy. Means we have no buckaronis, no money. So what you need to understand from a standing level on this is that we're into a recession. It's going to have to run its course with no stimulus. We have no cash on the sidelines. And you know what the really ugly part is? We're starting a trade war. And the trade war is devastating, especially when you get into a recession. That means companies are going to fight harder. The trade wars will make goods more expensive. For example, lumber in the United States is at record prices. Well, you don't have record housing. People are not buying houses, so what's happening is for the few people that are buying houses, the price is higher, or they're not buying houses at all. So you're seeing the reverse effect of this. Now, we have had Treasury officials come forward and start warning about that. We had Brainerd come along, and She said that the bond market is flashing a yellow light on possible recession. And let me read you a statement. I think it's very, very revealing. It said, it was unusual to have sizable tax cuts and a boost in government spending at this point in the business cycle. Now, let me explain what that means. Normally, you will do tax cuts, and you will do increase in government spending, I mean military spending, at the low of a recession when things are really bad, okay? Because that now the money has a place to go. But after 10 years of massive stimulus, after 10 years of massive government spending, the problem is that you don't get the boost of the economy. The money disappears, and that's what the problem is. So it's the valuations are absolutely staggering. In other words, you have an overvalued market, you have an overvalued junk market, you have an overvalued loan market, and this combination is what will put us into a depression. So you might know it's a very serious show because I have to announce to you that the next recession has started. The economic downturn will start filtering into the business numbers you're getting come the fourth quarter. GDP numbers will be pretty bad. But the problem we've got is the deficit's already soaring. So you need to be aware that we're entering a recession. We're entering into a bear market in the stock market. We're entering down into what will be very slow economic growth because the way the games play, they can make economic growth look like it's positive when it's not. You'll see growth in the job market, but only as we're seeing in the lowest level part-time, low-paying jobs, and you'll see a shift. See, what's going to happen is you're going to move those higher paid people in, for example, banks and loan departments, the higher paid people in insurance companies. They're going after the white-collar professional, okay? And they're replacing them with automation. In other words, automated. You want a mortgage loan? Well, fill the damn thing out on the internet and leave me alone. You want a credit card? You've got a trouble with your balance in your account. You want to know where your credit card's maxed out. You can do it all online. And if you happen to get to the point where you need a human, that will be artificial intelligence, or it'll be someone in India, because I can tell you for a fact that banks and financial insurance companies are involved in a massive exodus of their call centers and real people in two ways. One, they're restricting the amount of people that can get a hold of a real person, and they're going through the algorithms, and they've got these robots things. I don't know if you've tried the speech recognition, but it's phenomenal. And they can talk back and forth. If you're not even talking to a real person, and they found that most times people don't even know it. Now, if you are talking to a person, that's something not in the United States. So that is a massive loss in service jobs. Now, service jobs were the segment of the job market that picked up as manufacturing wiped out. So these service people from these financial institutions will now go into lower tier, less paying jobs. Part-time, no benefits, no retirement, no health care. And so that increases the burden on the entitlement system at the same time that the budget deficit is soaring and at the same time tax revenues is. I have to say this in all honesty. You couldn't have had a president that instituted the exact wrong formula for the economy at the exact wrong time. Like they said, the Fed said, it is unusual to have sizable tax cuts and a boost in government spending at this point of the business cycle, meaning as the business cycle has peaked. So you need to understand that everyone knows what's going on. So if you believe that the tax break bonanza for billionaires was a great thing, and if you want Kudlow to blow blue sky up your ass and convince you that massive investments in business, I constantly hear, well, we have constant investment in business, but Fox News, which I stream live and I watch constantly because I need a joke in my life, and I like to hear the latest bullshit. And it's just not true. There is not a massive investment in new hiring. There is not a massive increase in pay. There is not a massive investment in jobs, economy, and business in America. It's just plain not true. Okay, they're just declaring that shit. And as you get the GDP, that will show that. And as you look at the hours worked, that'll show that. And as you see the new jobs and what categories they're created in, you'll understand this. So we are headed for, and I'm warning you, a huge recession, the biggest you've ever seen. And with trade wars, that recession will become a depression. Now, you don't have to blame Donald Trump on the recession. He gets the credit for the coming depression. Now, as we move closer to the presidential election, that will be the volume of information you have. Everyone will be going for your vote, blowing blue sky up your ass, bullshitting you, lying to you, telling you all kinds of stories. And you're into what will be one of the most nastiest election cycles in the history of America. That will also be negative for business. It will also be negative for markets. And I do believe that more than ever that the chances of Donald Trump not finishing out his first term in office goes over 80% right now. And I believe that Donald Trump has been outclassed. He's not going to be able to fire the special prosecutor. And the reason why he's not is because the entire show has moved to New York. And where we had to worry about Manafort and Flynn, it's now a guy by the name of Cohen. And our analysis is that for now, Cohen will hold steady, that they're going to put enormous pressure on him. Now, as we did our news cycle from Friday to today, Kushner, who you might notice that's the son-in-law from hell, you might notice you haven't seen him, and he is now under grand jury investigation for his dirty deals in real estate, which will bring him down. You might notice that Trump Jr. is not seen or heard from, and that should speak volumes to you what's going on in this administration. The Trump administration is in seize mentality. The little thing of, Kim Jong-un says he's going to stop his nuclear program. Well, he hasn't stopped it. See, remember here, let me help you. Stopped means that it was an ongoing program. Kim Jong-un, like Pakistan, finished, and India, finished his nuclear program. It's done. He's got the bomb. He now goes into production. He doesn't have to pop off anymore, and he's not going to. As far as his rocket development, he's done. The secret to the rocket, contrary to myth, is guidance and the engine. Okay? That's what. If you got that, you got a rocket. Now, he has proven that he has got guidance systems. He has proven that he has got fantastic engines. And now they're trying to blow blue sky and say, well, the problem is that he doesn't have a re-entry vehicle. A re-entry vehicle module can be purchased on the market. They can be tested, by the way, without having to shoot off the space. And I can tell you that readily developed, proven re-entry vehicles, the finest in the world, are already in, should we say, process for nunchucks. So Kim Nunchucks, with the coaching of the Chinese, will now blow blue sky up your ass and talk about how, oh my God, Donald Trump brought peace to North Korea. Well, there's never a war there anyway. You're not going to remove, listen to me, you're not going to remove Kim Nunchuck's nuclear capacity or his manufacturing capacity or the rocket, so it's another Trump bullshit publicity stunt. Just like they're claiming they created jobs, they're not. Just like they're creating, the economy is growing at a great rate and great improvement because of the tax breaks for billionaires, not. And you want proof? Tax revenues are collapsing. If companies were hiring people and they were doing business, then they would be making profits and they would be paying taxes. And the answer is the corporate tax rate is collapsing. Individual tax rate is increasing, and also increased revenues from individuals increasing, while revenues of corporations plunging. The deficit is soaring, and we are entering a recession with a classic mistake that everybody made. It was a really shit tax legislation. It had no teeth in it to force investment. We are now heading to recession. So let me give you the following. The following is that short-term rates, which affect all your borrowing, all your business borrowing, all your friends, neighbors, credit cards, businesses, is climbing. It's now at the point where the 2-year rate, which is now at the highest level since before the last wipeout started, is now at the point where we'll wipe out the junk bond market. Marginal corporations will not be able to pay it. The economy is going to slow down, and as we get the GDP report, you will see tears. Tax revenues are plunging. Business investment and hiring is non-existent. And we're headed for the goddamnest recession you've ever seen, and ending up in depression. And there will be trade wars. And foreigners are already starting to put the bite on us. For example, Canada, without a whole lot of deals, raised the prices on their paper products. Everything from paper towels to 2x4s to plywood. China has raised duties on sorghum and is targeting the Midwest support group. So if you're farming you're dead meat. You're screwed to the wall. Dairy included, wheat, corn, and especially soybeans. Now, if you're packing chickens and pigs to sell to China, that market's dead. Automobile companies, well, they can't afford to go into the China market from their factories in America. So there's a little secret I need to tell you. General Motors and all the big car companies build what they call a Euro spec car. And if you look at a Euro spec car, laying this up side by side, the Euro spec car that is delivered to Europe has a much higher interior and finish quality than that same car in the U.S. market. And the reason why is Europeans are more particular about their interiors, and you can't get away with this plastic cheese shit that you got in your normal product. Now, then you've got what they call a world spec car. And that's a car that won't have like automatic air conditioning in it. That will have a much lower spec interior. It'll have a smaller motor with a carburetor restrictor plate in or injector restrictors in it, dummied down. It doesn't have the horsepower or power. And then you've got what we call the shit market cars. Now, these are really dummied down cars with plastic interiors, the smallest possible engine conceivable, and the shittiest car. Those are normally not produced in the U.S. factories. So the reality is the vast majority of U.S. automobile production is produced for domestic consumption. So although there's been a concession, there will be more with China on import duties of cars. In other words, there was a restriction of how many cars people could own of foreign origin. There was a much higher duty, 20-25%. That's all coming down. The problem is that Juan, on Tijuana, he says, hey, thank you very much, that his factory's going to get busy. The problem is the U.S. factories don't produce cars for the China market for the most part, and so there's no stimulus here. See, it's amazing the shit they don't want to tell you. Now, the other problem we've got, and this is the thing that you really, really, really need to be worried about, and that is the fact that we are now moving into a situation where the business cycle's over with, financing available for businesses is drying up, junk bonds will wipe out. That means that we're talking about wiping out the boomers' favorite little investment because the yield was so high I had to get it because retirement calculators showed me that I would be set for my retirement. But the retirement calculator wasn't a guarantee. And it was based on junk bonds, and it was not based on a recession or junk bond defaults, which you're getting. So the whole, and you might know it's a much serious show than normal. The basic bottom line here is that is now conclusive. We now have enough data on what's going on with interest rates. We now have enough data on what's going on with the economy. We now have enough data that our suspicions of what was going on with this tax break bonanza for billionaires has been confirmed. Game, set, match, you're headed for a recession. Your property is going to lose half its value. Your stock market portfolio will lose 2/3 of its value and plunge more. Bond defaults will reach 80% of issuance on the junk bonds. And Donald Trump will not serve out his term of presidency. And we're going to end up with a nasty socialist government that will raise the personal taxes on individuals to the moon. So that means if you've got an IRA, 10K, REK, 401, Roth, retirement fund, get your money out now, pay the taxes now. Get your money into U.S. government securities because interest rates on the long end will be going down and negative. So that means you want to lock them in. And interest rates on the short end have not peaked yet. They're going higher. So U.S. government securities are, for your safe, secure money, the way to go. The dollar, which has been getting trashed, has probably bottomed out against the euro and pound. You're going to see the dollar go higher and higher, especially when Europeans are running out of securities to buy. See, there's nothing to buy in Europe. You still have negative interest rates for $15 trillion of debt there. What they pay on debt is minuscule because the government's buying, the central bank's buying everything. So in order for them to get a yield, they're not about to buy junk bonds. They're too smart for that, too sophisticated. They're going to buy the safest, most secure instrument in the world, that's U.S. government securities. Now, all they're doing, by the way, is waiting on the sideline for the dollar to get good and cheap. In other words, the dollar's going down, so that means they buy a cheap dollar. And rates are going higher. And they will flood in like a dam breaking soon, within the next 6 months, and start scooping up U.S. government debt in the short term, and it will drop in value. So in other words, with buyers flooding the market, especially the 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, you're going to see the rates do a reversal and a plunge. On the short-term rates, we will peak Fed funds 3% this year. They might get 3.5. I don't see 4. and that'll be it. And then what's going to happen? The recession will end. The recession will enter, and then the rates will start back down, and you start the whole cycle over again. So you are in for a shitstorm. You are in for a wipeout, a stock market wipeout, a real estate wipeout, a business slowdown like we've never seen before, tax increases galore, a presidency that's up for grabs. You think Donald Trump's act crazy now? You ain't seen shit. As he gets more and more bad news, as more and more people roll over on him, and they're going to be rolling over on him, they're all going to play tough. And what's going to happen is, in spite of the fact they got the Giuliani there that's trying to solve the New York State problems, New York State has enough votes with the legislature, enough Democrats in there, enough people that hate Trump, that they're going to pass laws that make sure that if you get a pardon from the President of the United States from a federal prosecution, it ain't going to do you shit in a state prosecution. Now, once our good friend Cohen and Kushner and Flynn and Manafort and all the merry friends realize that no. You're a tough son of a bitch. You guys are Superman, but guess what? You cannot be pardoned from the state charges. They will, in unison, turn on Donald Trump, and it's going to be one of the ugliest radio shows you've ever seen. So you are prepared. Now, I don't give a shit if it's a deep-date conspiracy. If you believe this shit, one of the things they're kind of the bullshit they're blowing in blue sky up everyone's ass is that, hey, the evidence that was used to get a special prosecutor was leaked classified information. Therefore, the special prosecutor's prosecution is tainted and has to be stopped. That is bullshit. That is a walk on the wild side for people who don't know shit. Tainted evidence gets to the evidence involved in a case that was obtained incorrectly. Now, I can tell you that in most cases where they claim tainted evidence and throw it out is very rare. It's normally evidence for the case, like a gun or a knife. And a lot of times they have to show intent, okay? There is nothing of those kind of issues, so there's no chance that whatever happens to Comey, let's suppose he's the biggest scumbag in the world, and he lied, and he had top secret information like Hillary, and he's really a nasty guy and all that bullshit. You want to believe that? It's not enough to save Donald Trump's bacon. It's not enough to stop the prosecution. Now that the venue has moved to state federal prosecutors, by the way, in the Manhattan district, who hate Donald Trump's guts, all of them been screwed around by him. Many of them had their bosses fired and people they cared about, by the way, in a lot of nasty shit Trump pulled. This is going to court. The stormy weather thing is going to blow up. Donald Trump's going to have to probably give testimony. The evidence that they obtained from Cohen, well, let me give you a little secret there. That evidence is going to be omitted. And as far as Comey, the FBI agent that released leaked documents and all that, well, leaking is the order of the day. That's number one. Number two, leaking of non-classified information is not a crime. And I really believe that the FBI director was smart enough to leak information that would not be construed as top secret and illegal. And I'm sure he walked the line, and I'm sure he knows how to dance that tightrope very well. So if you have hopes for the great white hope, if you have hope for the blonde bomb Donald Trump to skate out of this thing, you are whistling Dixie and you're jerking yourself off because it's not going to happen. This economy is in trouble no matter what happens to Donald Trump. The tax break bonanza of billionaires cannot be reversed. It's too close to an election. It is devastating to the economy. And remember, those things are in concrete right now. So you got yourself the biggest screw-up president you've ever had. He screwed up because the Russians own his ass. And he screwed up because his mouthpiece, the fixer, is nailed, screw blue, tattooed, nailed to the wall, wired for stereo, with an electrode up his ass and a microphone implanted in his throat saying, anytime you're ready singing day or night, just speak into your mirror. And that's what's going to go on here. So if you want to go ahead and let these Fox Hannity guys who gets free legal service from the president and steak dinners and caviar at the White House, you don't get invited. Now, you may be able to stand by a D9 in a blue hat, hard hat, but that's about it. And you get a kick in the ass, thrown out the door, no bonus, no raise, and no infrastructure. So no infrastructure program. So you need to sit here, you need to take a deep breath, and you need to realize it's game, set, match, curtains for the economy. And that's what you should be concerned about. It's game, set, match, curtains for your junk bond shit. game, set, match for the stock market, game, set, match for your real estate. So unless your money is in U.S. government bonds, U.S. government securities, cash in your mattress, you don't have any money. And unless you are sophisticated enough to understand the tricky games it's going to take to make money in the falling stock market, you're screwed. Oil market's going to wipe out. Gold, silver, copper, palladium, platinum, through. There's a nice little lasher on nickel, too. You can add to that. And if you think Donald Trump's going to protect the Russians from global sanctions, that's not going to happen. And do you think Kim Yum Numchucks is going to become a member state and join and love mankind? That's bullshit. What's he going to do is be endless negotiations, endless concessions, endless publicity stunts, and you now, let me tell you, here's the reality, here's a wake-up call. Unless you see real inspectors going everywhere in the country they want, digging out every hidey hole and cave and finding the nuclear weapons, reality is that under Donald Trump, North Korea became a nuclear power. Under Donald Trump, they developed the A-bomb, proved it, tested it. They have the weapons. And other than a publicity stunt, to get you a little star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, nothing of sustenance is going to happen with Kim Jong Un. He's keeping his rockets. He won't fire any of them until the war starts. He's going to keep his nuclear weapons and make more, and he's not going to test them. He doesn't need to. And this is nothing but bullshit. Now, if you want to let bullshit guide your life, I'll tell you how you're going to end up. You're going to end up very poor, very broke, and maybe not so free anymore. So you have been warned here, absolutely positively. It's a very sad time. I have to report this, but it's pretty much in concrete now. In other words, our suspicions of what was going on in the tax break has been confirmed. The slowdown in the economy has been confirmed. The Fed raising rates have been confirmed. The Federal Reserve taking back the quantum easing has been confirmed. Trade wars have started, and Donald Trump don't know what the hell he's doing, neither does Kudlow, and they're going to screw you.
From an undisclosed location somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, it's everything Wall Street doesn't want you to know, everything the financial media won't tell you, everything mutual fund managers are hiding from you. This is the voice of the underground, the Wall Street Underground.
There's a man who leads a life of danger. To everyone he meets, he stays a stranger.
What are all the mutual fund promises about this bold new future? How come Wall Streeters aren't running for their lives and mutual fund hucksters? Why is no one talking about the $8 trillion they've wiped out?
Secret agent man, secret